Greetings, everyone. This is Rockwell's Pop Culture with Elder and some of Mutant Monday. So, for the next few weeks, Mutant Monday will be focusing on what happened the previous week in Ten of Swords. Now, technically speaking, Ten of Swords creation actually released a week and a half ago, but yeah, the shop that I frequent only got in the variant covers that week. So, yeah. Anywho. So first off, Ten of Swords is the first major crossover for the X-Men post House of X. A lot of the lead-in has been through Excalibur, as most Excalibur and X-Men. Excalibur kind of setting up the Otherworld portion of it, and X-Men setting up the two halves of Krakoa. But anyways, kicking things off with Ten of Swords creation. It begins with a quote from Saturnine. "All I see I own, and I am unsatisfied with the state of things." But the actual story begins with apparently the Four Horsemen standing outside, leading an army outside of Del Delor, which is the last watchtower, the kingdom of Dryador in Otherworld. And they're laying siege to it. The king opts to stay there, but passes on a sigil sword to a page to pass along a message to Saturnine. The page is pierced with an arrow from Pestilence as he flies away. And he ends up painfully dying at the Starlight Citadel, saying that the tower has fallen and Araco has fallen. So Saturnine gets out does a tarot reading. Judgment. The death of death and the new way forward. The witch bring back their own dead now. Have they considered what else from the past awakens in the earth? What rises to face those who call themselves immortal? The Four of Wands. A family that has been fighting for eons has one final confrontation before they rest over the ashes of the defeated. They crave the last battle and the spoils of victory. They have built a hard home, and one must dwell within. The Hanged Man. Here no men hang, but something has been suspended indeed. Time? Natural laws and earthly attachments? They bring themselves here to the game at the gallows. What do they wager to lose? Next up, the Eight of Cups. Someone's heart has been left empty. She has been waiting for something more. Will she turn away? Will she be turned away? A woman like this keeps her cup close. And finally, the Ten of Swords. Ah, here it is then, my light in the darkness. Something I have long desired flickers just out of my reach. But for the ones who hold the blades, a great match lights the darkness indeed. And it turns out that as this reading was being done, various others who utilized tarot cards were also drawing the same cards in the same order. Even if they reshuffled their tarot decks, they would still draw the same cards in the same order. Most notably, we have the former Hellion Tarot, her cousin, and her cousin's landlady's wife all drew the same 5 cards. Judgment, 4 of Wands, the Hanged Man, 8 of Cups, and 10 of Swords. On Krakoa, at the external gate, something comes through. An otherworld creature ridden by Summoner and Banshee, who Summoner claims is dying. Summoner informs Apocalypse, his grandfather, there's an army on the march, and there's war underway. And that Summoner, Banshee, and Uranus the Untouchable were ambushed in Krakoa on the way to another world, on the way to Arako. So, Apocalypse brings his grandson before the Quiet Council. They don't really like the whole, oh, you just randomly built a gate. Though, Krakoa makes a point of saying, hey, yeah, I like the gate. We're keeping it. And everyone's like, oh, hey, that. But Summoner tells what happened, that they were promptly ambushed, and sadly, Uranus the Untouchable was left behind. But they're trying to figure out what to do. Jean volunteers to get Scott to lead a rescue team through for Uranus, and whatever else needs to be done. Though Apocalypse declines, saying he will go. Exodus has a feeling that there's something beyond the horizon waiting for them. And while the Quiet Council does vote to destroy the external gate, however, Krakoa also again shuts them down. And states that the external gate must stay open. But Apocalypse is told what he's about to do is being done without the authority of the council and without their blessing. Later at the external gate, those going in with Apocalypse have gathered. Polaris, Havoc, Rockslide, Siren, Richter, Beast, Archangel, and of course, Apocalypse. And finally, M. Beast is actually... Well, everyone's there for their own reasons, though. Polaris was sent by Magneto as the strength of the House of M must never be questioned. Havoc went because since this is all being done extra council, Scott couldn't really come, so he asked Alex to keep an eye on things. Meanwhile, Archangel and Warren also discussed everyone else's presence, with Archangel opining it's quite an unusual gathering. Richard's got something going on with Apocalypse that Warren doesn't understand, but they're inseparable. Same with Rockslide and Summoner. Siren insisted on coming after what happened to Banshee. However, Warren's not sure why Hank's there, except maybe curiosity? Though Hank explains that he's a creature of habit. And Hank is actually curious as to why Warren's there. And he explains that all this talk from Apocalypse of hidden lands and secret histories, even though these are new days for us all, Warren doesn't trust Apocalypse, never will, so he has to be there. which then leads them to Monet, wondering what the hell she is thinking. Apocalypse asks Monet if Monet's ever been to Otherworld. Ventured into the unseen lands, felt the invisible hand of the Starlight Citadel as she moves the Citadel, and says that no, she hasn't. And when she's asked why she's joining the group, she explains that it feels like a job she might want down the road. And then Monet is the one to actually lead the way in through the external gate. We also get a brief write-up on the Krakoan kingdoms. Back at the Healing Gardens, Prestige and Cable, however, are opt to find out what happened in Otherworld by reading Banshee's memories. Back at the external gate, Warren and Archangel and Apocalypse go through. And Apocalypse is actually quite happy to see Warren A there with going with them all, and B in his Archangel form. And however, Archangel does get to have the kind of conversation he could never have had before the days of Krakoa. Asking Apocalypse, saying to Apocalypse, you know what blows my mind? That you think that you can just be you and there's no end to it. Our sins find us out, Apocalypse. Though Apocalypse says one cannot call something a sin when it's a righteous work being done. And Archangel says that right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That lie that if you think it matters, then it's okay if someone else pays. Then he asks if there's nothing Apocalypse has done that he regrets. As they arrive, however, they see the Starlight Citadel under siege, and Unis is being held prisoner by those besieging the Citadel. Apocalypse looks and sees that the Citadel is under siege, apparently by his children, and he answers Warren's question, explaining that is his regret. The first four. And he explains who they are. They were his light, his life, something lost he dared not believe to find. His sons, his daughters, his children. Back on Krakoa, Cable at the Healing Gardens, Cable and Prestige have managed to get into Banshee's mind and discover that what actually happened was, well, that gets revealed later. Apocalypse goes before his children, hoping for a happy reunion. It seems that, one is, that's what's coming, but, yeah, Apocalypse gets stabbed by one of the horsemen and shanked by Summoner. And as that's going on, Prestige and Cable learn that the Summoner betrayed Banshee and Unis. And so Saturnine watches the battle between the X-Men and the forces of the Horsemen. Summoner squares up with Rockslide. Who's feeling a little betrayed by Summoner, as the two had recently become friends. However, that friendship is definitively destroyed when Summoner makes a blade and cuts through Rockslide with it. Also amongst the wounded are Richter, who's pierced with one of the arrows of pestilence. Siren, Archangel, and Beast head back towards the external gate, while Havoc, Polaris, and M in her penance form cover the retreat. Beast states that this is probably time for a tactical retreat, though Havoc states, you guys go, get help. We'll stay here and make sure no one gets through the gate. But, try not to take too much time to do so. At the summer house on the moon, Cable comes to them from the healing gardens to explain what's happened, as he was shown something by Saturnine when she interrupted his and Prestige's probing of Banshee's memories. Scott, it's something that Scott knows exactly what it is and where it is. In Otherworld, Havoc, Polaris, and M are doing their best to hold off the Horseman's forces, and M gets psychically very much up in Saturnine's face. And so, but that didn't seem to do any good. So, it's decided that their invitation to the battle will be turned into a request, and Polaris wants to drag this Rock Citadel closer to the ground. Back with Jean, Scott, and Cable, they teleport to where the generator is that Cable saw in his vision. But we don't yet know where exactly it's at. Only that the X-Men, this one group of X-Men did have to take a gate to Earth and then use an old teleportation facility to go to where the generator was. On Otherworld, Saturnine takes control Saturnine exercises her control over Otherworld itself and freezes things. And some decisions are made, or begins to decide what to do. Back with the Summers family, turns out it's an energy core. It's an igniter that reopens. Scott explains that everything where they're at is powered by a remote singularity drive. The energy flows are accessed by a stable trans-space bridge, which apparently is offline because everything here looks like it's running on backup. If he remembers correctly, that where they're at is the igniter that reopens the bridge, enabling everything to power back up. The problem is that you need a pretty significant independent power source to get the bridge up and running, or to get it started. He doesn't know where they might find one. However, Cable pulls out his sword, the Light of Galador, and figures he might have an idea, especially as there seems to be an opening to the core that's rather thin and rectangular in a horizontal manner. I was just saying, please put an energy sword. Place energy sword here. On Otherworld, Saturnine rather amusingly changes the Horseman of Death's appearance, and has decided that they shall have a tournament for Otherworld. And then one of the horsemen rattles off a list of names, either be it swords or sword bearers, but the Twilight Blade, Mercy, Vermilion, the Red Sword of War, Colony, the Black One of Amduat, Seducer, Pogger, Pog, Purity, Alluvian, Muramasa, as does Polaris. Muramasa, the Sword of Might, the Starlight Sword, Grasscutter, Godkiller, Warlock, the Soul Sword, the Scarab, the Light of Galador, Skybreaker. And as they're named off, Saturnine states there, the Ten of Swords. Back with the Summers, Cable inserts the Light of Galador into the energy core, which establishes a bridge. And the X-Men as well as the Horsemen are told they have 3 days to gather their champions and their swords. Then Monet asks Saturnine what game she's playing, and Saturnine simply says the oldest one there is. But we get basically the X-Men pick their champions, find the blades, and then the contest begins. You step into the arena knowing the full measure of what they're fighting for, face their enemies, who wants nothing less than your total annihilation, look them in the eye, steady yourself. And then, you raise your sword. And with that, we discover just where it is Cyclops, Jean, and Cable are. The Peak, headquarters of the of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s space-based sister organization, SWORD. How rather fitting. That is where the issue ends, however. Which brings us to Chapter 2 of Ten of Swords. In X Factor number 4. So, X Factor picks up with Beast, Archangel, Siren, Richter, and Apocalypse all returning from other worlds to the external gate, and Siren calling for help. And it does seem that both Apocalypse and Richter may well be dying. Prestige shows up and basically makes telekinetic stretchers for Richter and Apocalypse, takes them to the healing gardens, and then shortly thereafter, Havoc, Polaris, Monet, Unis come through along with the remains of Rockslide. However, Saturnine just opts to close the external gate, which Saturnine has decided to take an interest in Polaris as well. At the Healing Gardens, both Monet and Prestige have attempted to read Polaris' memories, but Saturn has set up a telepathic construct to prevent that from happening. As Apocalypse notices that it seems that the healing guards are simply letting Richter die, he's about to very nearly tells Healer to join Richter in death, but he's contacted by. However, Prestige manages to get the stop in his assault on Healer. But Apocalypse does manage to kick Rachel out, or Prestige out of his head. The Arbor Magna, Polaris and Xavier there to oversee the resurrections. And Xavier shows the Five just what's happening. Kind of a, yeah, we're maybe going to have to really pick things up with the resurrections are probably going to be a little different at the moment for resurrections. And so Richter and Rockslide are resurrected. However, something is not right with Rockslide, and basically all of something goes wonky with the telepaths. The spare Cerebro helmets also get a little wonky. The Five's connection is briefly broken, but then Rockslide does fall apart, and they have Elixir destroy the. As Egg thinks that possibly the problem was with the eggs, they do temporarily destroy the eggs. But it's not Rockslide, or rather, not their Rockslide. But they do verify that yes, it is. Richter is Richter. And Xavier confirms yes, that is definitely their Richter. Though Hope thinks she may have figured out what happened with Rockslide. Basically, dying in Otherworld is the final death. But Magneto does briefly berate Polaris, but then in the middle of him berating her, though, she begins to babble. As above, so below. From one wound came two, a hero destined to brandish what the earth hath swallowed, and an echo doomed to yearn for what the stars hath forsworn. Lost soul, an edge gained, a lone wanderer returns to a forge that's ablaze. Sword in the stone, stationed in space, a young man born old, pilots in a place. or pilots the place. A father forsaken, a husband betrayed, an ancient treasure sharpens the death his children crave. Friends self, friends lost. Out of one comes many, into many comes one. 8 years gone in seconds, from her childhood lost comes a woman grown. Her only friends were weapons, now her soul will blade hers alone. Once goddess, once queen, one sword with which to split the sky in twain. Vibranium inlaid, a tempest contained. She is the wrath of heavens, wielding a legacy. Ego, death, and broken stone. 2 wars waged by one champion alone. But Lorna then comes to and picks the remains of Rockslide and runs off. That night, Xavier and Magneto speak to Apocalypse in the Healing Gardens. They say that for the moment, resurrection protocols are offline. So that there may be a delay in Apocalypse's resurrection should he succumb to his wounds. Meanwhile, Polaris is making something. And the next morning, it appears to be done. And she explains that that's the real clue that Saturnine left her. Tournament key, a casting circle. As champions retrieve their swords, they return here to a position within the circle when each of these symbols is touching the corresponding sword at the same time, then the tournament portal opens. But the instructions were left in Polaris' head by Saturnine using the Earth's geomagnetic spectrum, so of course it couldn't be read by telepaths. Building the portal required sacrifice. Like actual literal sacrifice. And she used the remains of Rockslide to build the summoning circle. Or the casting circle. And from this day forward, the circle will remain as a permanent memorial to Rockslide. The Sanctus Sacrum. Sacred sacrifice. This explains that when the portal opens, they march to slaughter. The scourge who brought the unwelcome conflict to their doorstep that killed their little brother. And she adds that they failed Santo. To honor his sacrifice, they must make his death count. And then Magic shows up, sticks the tip of the soul sword on one of the sigils, and it lights up. The first of the swords is found. Then we get a write from Cypher about the various what was said by Polaris. Clearly, 8 years gone in seconds refers to Illyana. Beacon slices darkness, stationed in space. A young man born old pilots a place. Cable. Friends self, friends lost. Out of one comes many, into many comes one. Seems an awful lot like Warlock, though the second part, Doug doesn't quite get. Once goddess, once queen clearly refers to Storm, especially when you bring up the vibranium. Also, Cypher thinks that Storm should cross-stitch that for her house. Next up, Lost Soul and Edge gained, and at first it stumped Cypher a little bit. Logan seems to be sure that some of the Muramasa blade will factor in here, so he's taking care of it. Now it all makes sense to Cypher. Lone Wanderer, that's Logan. As above, so below, from one womb came two, a hero destined to branch what the earth hath swallowed, and an echo doomed to yearn for what the stars hath forsworn. And Cypher thinks that maybe this means the Braddock twins, but Brian isn't a mutant. He's also not sure which one is which in this case. Next up, Ego, Death, and Broken Stone, 2 wars waged by one champion alone. Apparently, Gorgon showed up rather quickly when he heard they were talking about swords, and he's positive that's him. That's talking about him. A father forsaken, a husband betrayed. An ancient treasure sharpens the death his children crave. Apocalypse is certain that's about him too. So, and he's known from the beginning he was going to be involved, so he's gone to collect his sword, which is where the issue ends. And that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.